This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/mapperforward to find out how you can become a member today. Now, with the pandemic came another element for producers, which was not related to the pandemic, but just happened to coincide. To add another layer of stress onto things. And we found that coffee shortages were influencing the commodity market. And coffee shortages were inviting speculators, as Bloomberg and the Financial Times all started, thinking about it. Speculators got into the market and thought, well, we could make some money here. And this worked well for some producers, and it spooked other producers and caused people to do things like default on contracts. And we spoke about this at the Global Coffee Town Hall in the English one, where Judith Gaines was saying that what she noticed was that there are producers that are defaulting on contracts because at the time that they signed the contracts, the coffee price was one thing. And then the price started skyrocketing and they could make more now.
Yeah.
Did you guys see some of this stuff as the pandemic was progressing?
That happened here and prices went crazy. But I think that helped us to realize that we weren't paying enough and charging enough for coffee. And also, it sets the opportunity for us to increase the market because of the tiny gap between the commodity coffees and the specialty coffees, because it used to be huge.
Yeah.
And suddenly, it's not that big. And people can prefer a fresh, nice coffee just for a minimum jump in the price instead of drinking shit.
Yeah.
So I guess this problem makes us conscious about the real value of our product and our work. It was hard because some of the business need to increase the prices too much because they were making bad costs calculations. So, for example, my company increased the roasted beans around maybe 20%.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's hard to the regular customer, but it's our responsibility with the chain, because otherwise it's not going to be sustainable. And also we need to heal the debt that we have with the other years of pandemic, because one example is in 2020 we decrease our prices in coffee because people cannot pay for specialty coffee. It was an entire crisis in Mexico, so we need to decrease the prices to be affordable for the coffee shops and for the consumer. And also at the coffee shop, we decrease the prices. And the problem is that now, when we got back, the people, it's like freaked out, like, you increased 20%. No, we are just back at the price
fake
before
inflation.
pandemic.
Right. It's fake inflation.
Yeah.
A lot of the producers that I had spoken to at the time that the prices were going up were telling us that it was no longer worth them to farm their coffee or to process their coffee as specialty because they were getting such great prices as for commodity grade. So they just sent it all to commodity.
Yes, that happened a lot in Mexico. A lot of producers start to wash coffee, no more honeys and naturals, just for the special varieties they processed aside. But that also kind of make a selection of the producers who can and will to develop a more interesting product for the post-COVID market. So the roasters and producers need to team up to
conspire to each other's success.
Yes, but also to have a better future, because we have an example of a producer who harvested his first geisha. And it was a good coffee. It was super clean, citrusy. It was a geisha. But at that moment, there was no market for that coffee. And the next year, that coffee is going to be better. And it's going to be paid higher to the producer. But we need to team up to make a market for that specific product. So maybe we buy the first geisha at one price, and maybe can using marketing tools promote it to generate the expectation for the next year crop.
Right.
Even if this one was a very small lot and not top quality, but putting everything on the next crop. But that can only be built with stronger relationships and this fast communication of the cell phone.
And the investment that's needed, because it's not that. I think that a lot of the challenges that we're going to experience in 2022 is that a lot of people have reached the end of whatever runway they had. You know, people had maybe a couple of years worth of frustration that they could deal with, or a couple of years worth of investment money that they could deal with, or a couple of years worth of mental health that they could deal with.
Yeah.
And now we're at 2022. And I think a lot of people have reached the end of that. So if you were starting this geisha investment 2 years ago, maybe we would have some room to be able to see where that could go. Now we've got to make it move faster with less investment of time and money and people's ability to be patient with things. Because I don't know that the coffee community is really aware of how challenging a year from a global economic perspective this is going to be in 2022. And unfortunately, from everything that I'm seeing, the associations that should be speaking openly about this are not. And I think that we need to prepare small businesses and we need to prepare producers and the supply chain in general for the fact that we are about to experience a challenging year.
Yes, I think that we focus a lot on quality, but not in sustainability.
I couldn't agree with a more perfect statement. You know, this goes back to the idea of being very deliberate about teaching business owners the fundamentals of how to run a business. Because when you have that foundational building blocks, that contributes in such a huge way to a sustainable business. You know, does it make sense for me to buy Geshes if I haven't built a customer acquisition plan that wants Geshes?
Mm-hmm.
And we can focus on coffee competitions as long as we want. But if we haven't understood how what the feedback loop is for our businesses or our long-term careers, we're just taking I call it dessert for dinner. We're not looking at the long game. And I think that, again, this goes back to the think tank. This is where I want to create this community that kind of looks more into that perspective of things, where we can look to a long-term sustainable trajectory for us as an industry, rather than just as what's the short-term hit. Mm-hmm. So before we go, what are you most hopeful about for this year?
Most what?
Hopeful for.
For this year. Maybe I don't know. There's so many things wrong. No, yeah. I really hope that I don't know if you heard about what we made at Café con Jiribilla. We are not focused on points in cupping. We're focused on the chemistry between we and the people and the relationship. Mm-hmm. And yes, the flavor is important, but it's not everything. And I really hope that this kind of empathic model, yes, moves to other stages of the chain. Even at the last stage between the consumer and the barista or the roaster. Because I don't know in other countries, but in Mexico, during the pandemic, almost everyone was in crisis. And that's why we lower our prices. And some of coffee shops who can, they even gave away coffee. And we need to be a more empathy-driven than quality-driven community. And we need to be a community first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading about what's a community, but because it's a word you heard a lot. But there's different kinds of community. There's memory community, geographic communities, and first coffee needs to make a decision about which kind of community we want to be.
Yep.
Because right now we are a memory community about the before pandemic.
Yep. And empathy is going to play such an important role in that, because you used a really important term, I think, when you spoke of crisis. Everyone was in crisis. And people's reaction to crisis determines the long-term trajectory of how that crisis ends up influencing their life. And so if your response to crisis is, fuck everyone, I've got to take care of myself, that ends up determining one trajectory. An alternative to that is, well, who is my community? How can we work together to survive this? And then help each other once the threat has gone. And then I can figure out, what does the long-term trajectory look for me, right? And I think we as a global specialty coffee community really, really suffered from the fact that we didn't have, in my humble opinion, we did not have strong leadership from the governing associations that should have shown more leadership to bring us together, to show more, to inject more confidence into the potential outcome for this pandemic. And that's just my opinion. That is, we're going to have Yanis and I are talking now about him coming on the podcast so that we can talk openly about this, because it's important, in my opinion, for us to understand what the SCA did and didn't do and why they did and didn't do it. But I think that an important part of what you've said about community is that we need to reflect on what's the governing force. And I don't mean governing as in telling us what the rules are and aren't, but what's the bond that holds our community together? And you know what? We're in trouble if that's fucking coffee competitions. That's the problem. If the thing that holds us together as a community is the World Barista Competition, we should be quite nervous about that. In my humble opinion, right? Do you agree?
I think that should be the place where relationships for the community began, but not should be the bond. The bond needs to be something that we don't even care about each other, and we need to look for what's going to build the community, not just like a success, like an event. The event is to meet the potential community, but what is the concrete that put everything together?
Which unto itself, let's be real, the endeavor of barista competitions is an elitist endeavor. There's nothing wrong with that. That's an elitist endeavor. To become the elite amongst elite is what a competition is. It's like the Olympics, right? That's the Olympics of coffee, which fundamentally creates a problem for the idea of community, if that's the cornerstone of how we're beginning our communities. It's just something I've been thinking about for quite some time now. And anyone who's listening to this podcast knows that I have a fundamental issue with this, because our industry hasn't figured out how to build community beyond competitions and throwdowns. And the pandemic exposed that. So if we are going to move forward, we've got to figure out how to change this. Because if the fundamentals of how we're starting relationships is based on an elitist endeavor, in an industry that takes a commodity that's based on colonialistic attributes, there's so much that's wrong with this. So I think we can do better. I really, really do think we can do better.
Yes, that's something that we regularly debate with my friends and actually other local champions. I think for a producing country, it's quite different, because you doesn't get to be a rock star. You get to be an ambassador of a huge chain and a lot of people. And we always talk about this like, what does this person make during his champion year?
Mm-hmm.
What does he contribute to the community? Because that position, that elite position needs to be used for something, but you need leadership for that.
Right. We go back to, I think that there's more work could be put into creating a kind of unified leadership that helps direct that process, helps encourage it, helps set an example for it. And I'm not sure that that's happening enough. I think we can, I just think we can do better. And I think we need to be thinking about how we can do better as this pandemic progresses and we enter a year where financially this is going to be so difficult. I think now we are going to start to see a lot more businesses closing 2 years into a pandemic. This is the year that will break the businesses that were just barely holding on. And then where's the community? Something you and I have failed at today is making short episodes that people... This episode has gone for like 40 minutes. We will try and do better the next time you and I meet for a podcast. But I couldn't have a conversation with you that was 10 minutes each episode. It's just not possible.
It's because I speak too slow.
No, it's because we're both deep thinkers and we like to explore really meaningful things, and this has been an absolute joy, Carlos. I really appreciate you opening your mind to share your ideas here. This has been really fun, and I hope it wasn't too harsh for you and that you'll come back sometime and do it again.
No, I definitely come back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Where can find me? At Coyoacan in Mexico. I'm always here.
On social media?
On social media, it's like Carlos de la Torre, or the ad is kind of weird. It's Coffee, LOSOFFE, like coffee philosophies.
Okay. Oh, I like that. I never put that together, actually. But we'll put the links in the show notes below for everyone to come and find you. Thanks again, my friend. I'll let you get back to your evening now. I really appreciate it. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.